Welcome to the Bran panel. My name is Val, and I run the channel Because Geek, which is mainly about detective work on Game of Thrones. Long story short.
I'm Sanrixian. I'm a fan artist in the community. They call me the mother of dragons, and today I'm Arya Stark, so I'm a sibling to Bran today.
I'm Dancing Sean from History Westeros.
I'm Old Man Jon Snow. I'm Phil from TheIssuesGuy. And I'm not awake yet.
Yeah, everybody get your coffee and your monsters in. This is your wake-up panel.
I know. It's an interesting conversation to have first thing in the morning about Bran. I mean, I think going into this panel, I can't speak for everybody, but we picked these before the season started. I believe everyone did. So, like, going into the season, thinking I was going to be on a Bran panel, I was extra excited because I thought that, he'd do so much. There'd be so many interesting things happening with him this season. And I'm not going to say that I was completely disappointed with everything that happened with him this season, but the conclusion of his arc, we got the king over there, yeah, was unique. I was filled with a lot of emotions throughout the season about doing this panel. Halfway through, like, what are we going to talk about at the end? And then at the end, oh my God, what are we going to talk about?
Hold on, let me clarify something. You got to pick your panels?
Yeah.
I just say, give me whatever.
No,
Bran, fine, I'll do Bran.
I knew it all along. I picked this panel.
Nice.
No, I'm just kidding. I had no idea. Who had any idea that Bran was going to be king?
Yeah,
Did you guys expect that?
Just George Martin, I guess.
Bran did.
Oh, yeah, definitely Bran did, yeah.
Why do you think I've come all this way?
Yeah.
But I guess we talked a little bit, I guess that's a good first point. Did people think, are we projecting meaning? Did Bran know the whole time? When he gave the dagger to Arya, did he know how the game would end? When he said, what do people think? If you think Bran knew, raise your hand the whole time.
Yeah.
All right, who's good at percentages?
Yeah.
There's still some follow-up to that. Like, what do you mean by the whole time?
Okay.
Like, from the moment
that
Jaime pushed him out of the window?
That he borged with the three-eyed raven. The moment that they sort of connected, was it just the three-eyed raven that took over the situation, or the children that took over the situation and planned this all out? I mean, we're starting conspiracy quick.
Yeah.
Here, but
I'll say, my thought on this is probably going to be pervasive. Almost this whole panel, I'm going to go back. I'm going to call this Sean's point 1A. Is it even if he knew? What does it mean to know something? He might have had some vision, but not really understood what it meant.
Yeah.
Like literally, even if he saw himself sitting on the Iron Throne, which by the way, that didn't even exactly happen.
No.
Which might cloud the vision even more.
That might really hurt his butt if he tried to say that. Melted.
But it doesn't mean he really understands it. Like Melisandre knew Stannis was the prince that was promised. She knew it, but she was wrong. Mm-hmm. And Bran is more inexperienced than ancient Melisandre about interpreting these prophecies and visions. So I think he may have had some idea or some vision, but didn't understand what it meant.
Right. That's a good point.
Think about Jojen. He seemed to have a certain amount of clarity.
Yeah, he had more agency in his visions than we've seen Bran have.
But even still, sometimes it was hard to tell if Jojen wasn't being forthright because he didn't really know or understand, or because he didn't want Mira to be scared, or because he was scared people wouldn't go along with what he thought they needed. But...
Or the three-eyed raven was manipulating him as well.
Yeah.
Could be. Yeah.
I always felt like where we're at in the books, I was like, is Bran actually going to leave that cave?
Ever.
Like, because we were given Bloodraven as our example where he's become a tree person. And it kind of like fused into that tree. So I'm like, is this Bran's end destination? So when I saw the end of the show, it just kind of like messed me up because I'm like, wait, how is this going to happen in more time? Like, how is this all going to unfold to get Bran to where he is now? How do you feel about that? Like, obviously he leaves the cave, so never mind. That's a silly question. But...
I want to answer one question before we left. I did not understand or get the impression that he could see the future.
Yeah, I was just going to say.
Online, he could see the future, he knew he was here. Like, how did you know? What did I miss?
Well, he had those images of the dragon flying over King's Landing, right? He had those same visions that Dany had.
Well, yeah, so in the show, and just to, I know the recording is through the mic so they can hear the question. So the question was, how do we know that Bran can see the future? And I believe there is one scene in the show where they actually say that he can. I can't remember exactly where it was, but I'm pretty sure I remember one of those is saying he can see the past, present, future.
It's kind of
Season 3.
implied also that like he doesn't really understand his visions. Like he may get glimpses of the dragon flying over King's Landing like Drogon, but what does that mean to him other than a flash that he's seen in sequence with King Aerys?
It's kind of what you were saying, Sean. Yeah, and great point, Mallory.
Yeah.
Too. It's what you were saying with he saw it but couldn't quite interpret it properly the right way, and maybe he was flashed with visions of the future but couldn't see it and read the tree leaves.
Tea leaves.
Tea leaves. Thank you.
Yes. It's one of those prophecy will bite you in the ass kind of deals.
Yeah, almost all. I mean, that's almost like the nature of Bran, and probably the nature of this panel is it's hard to really know. That's why Martin and writers like to use prophecies, because they get to be tricky with it, you know. There's another thought that I've had is, imagine if someone from medieval times got transported to the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C., and just had all the medical knowledge of modern time. Okay, the cure to the plague's in there. Go ahead, go get it. Like, with how they don't know how to interpret all this data. They don't know where to look. You know, it's one thing to theoretically be able to see the future, but to know where to look and what you're looking at and what it means, it's a lot. And I kind of suspect in the show that his, like, you know, what do you think? They wanted to give him some one-liners. It got pretty flashy at the end.
He did.
You know what I mean? Like,
I'm waiting for my friend.
Yeah. So let's just assume specifically Martin wants Bran to become king. The nature of how it happens or what Bran thinks about it is there's still a lot to be figured out there.
The things we do for love.
Yeah, yes.
So does that explain where his visions are going in and out and prophecies that he's making sense of, where he says that he can't be the king of the north because he's the three-eyed ring of the throat, and yet someone pushed him all the way down to King's Landing, where he says, well, this is how do you think I came over?
It's funny. It's funny when you said push, I thought you were going to Jamie for some reason. Someone pushed him. I'm like, wait, where are we going with this?
He was gently wheeled.
He was gently wheeled.
All the way there.
He used his mind, you know.
So the question was, like, how did he make it to Westeros after he said specifically, like, I can't be the king of anything? Right. Okay.
I assume this. I was just talking about somebody with this. It would have been. I don't want to get into this, but it would have been good to see more details of what happened post what happened with Jon killing Dany. Like, how was the conversation with Grey Worm after that? What did Sansa say in the North? Like, I was right. And then we're all going down. How did she galvanize everyone together? How did she wheel Bran down? Like, I kind of want to see some of those. My voice is changing like Peter Brady right here. And it's time to change. Sorry.
Yeah, well, I think there is... So the main theory that everyone loves, that, you know, Bran planned the whole thing and he's actually evil, or, you know, maybe it was a three-eyed raven inside of Bran's head and not really Bran just doing all of this. I think there is some sort of relation in the books for that, or supporting evidence for that. And I think it's very interesting to remember the fact that the three-eyed raven in the books is actually Brynden Rivers, who's a Blackfire. And, you know, Blackfires are known for their rebellions, and they always want to, you know, try and be king in some way. So could it be, you know, the Brynden Rivers manipulating Bran and doing all this stuff to become king in the end, in the books?
I mean, if you think about with Duncan Egg and how feared he is, it wouldn't be a far stretch to think that he would want to control Westeros for as long as possible. And if he found some connection to magic to tap into that, and so that's an interesting point.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking about that earlier. Like what would it be to actually have Bran as a king? Like, because where we're left, and when the show is obviously the end, and Sam and everybody get together and have the council, and, you know, Lord Bran, pictured here. But yeah, like, how does everybody feel about essentially a computer, Bran, King Bran, being in charge of Westeros? Do we think he's going to be a good king? Do we think he's going to be a bad king?
I wonder why he wants to find that dragon.
Yeah.
He really wanted that dragon. He's going to handle that. Like, you know.
So I think he'll be a good king for a number of reasons, primarily of which I'll say two. He's not ambitious. I don't think. I guess there might be an argument that he is. And connected to that, he's like has and is listening to good counsel. And to that end, why does he want to find the dragon? Like, I want to be positive-minded. It's freaking dangerous, man.
Yeah, that's true.
Dangerous, burn castles down, kill people,
we have a
livestock,
nucleus.
babies. Like, he's got to at least like want to keep tabs on it.
My
Look out
fear with
it,
him for king is that is he going to be a people person? Because he can't really relate. He really needs to lean on lean on letting Tyrion and Davos. Yeah. I'm no big city lawyer, but I think I should run the kingdom. I think Davos should run the kingdom.
Like, there's this idea that I think we have from watching the show that makes sense. That the leader character, maybe I'm going a step too far, but generally speaking, what's being propped up as leaders, like the standard is like, how good are you running around with your sword? That's like the thing. Are you the oldest boy? Can you go fight with your sword? Oh, well, you should be king. Like, that's such a silly way to decide the leaders, you know? And so, and Bran is so far from that everyone's like, what? How can this be? But to me, it's like, this is probably what it should be. We probably don't want some person with this ambition and this bravado and his testosterone just wants to boss people around. That's probably not the best thing.
Sean, your explanation is way better than Tyrion's was. So if that was the explanation, that like why, but not that he has the best story. I mean, that was a lot. Made sense what you just said there. You know,
we did a panel yesterday called "Fit to Sit," and we were talking about all the previous kings of Westeros and who we thought would be, or why we had good rulers, ineffectual rulers, and bad rulers. And the whole time I was just like, man, okay. Bran actually is going to be a pretty dang good king. Yeah. Because he does know the people. And I had mentioned Chloe Liza Arbor on Twitter of Girls Gone Canon, as you guys probably know. She had done this whole thread talking about the good moments in Bran's story and like all the things that he did for the small folk. Like when they feed him like the bread with the almonds and the nuts, he thinks like, oh, I'm going to come back and I'm going to pay them back for those for that bread like 3 times over, because that's good King Bran, essentially. Yeah. Like, it's proving to you that he has suffered and he has gone through this stuff, kind of like Fagon, where Fagon's being given this treatment of being raised to go through the struggles instead of just being like given the expectation that he's going to be a good ruler just because he was born to it. So Bran having to go through this whole hero's journey kind of, I feel like, builds him up to be a good
and thinking
king.
About how quickly he was forced to be the adult in that situation, and I think it gets explained. I talked about this in the panel yesterday, so sorry for repeating myself. I think it gets explained even better because there's some moments on the show that they do there where you see him ruling in Winterfell, but in the books they really go into it with him with the phrase showing up and all of that, and expands, and we get to see him in a lot of leadership situations, being inside his head. And to go to what Sean says, he's a very fair-minded. Bran's still in there. Yeah, he can be a good king,
and we don't know, like in the books, how they're going to handle killing the Night King. So even if it goes down in the same way where the Night King is killed in front of a heart tree, what does that mean for the Werewood Network? What does that mean for the Green Seers? Like, are they still even going to... Is magic still going to be around? Like,
how's the hold the door situation going to play out in the books, too?
Yeah, like how... We don't know. We're going to have to wait for
time travel?
I know, but I can't quite interpret my vision. Sorry.
But with that thought, the reason I brought that up, sorry to interrupt, but if the Werewood Net, say, ends, and does that end Bloodraven? Does that end the Three-Eyed Raven? So do we get Bran back after all of that? Because that would kind of make sense in a way. But I feel like they would have also done that on the show.
Like one of the main reasons it's so great to see you guys. I was at the one last year, and it's just thanks for doing this.
Thank you.
One of the reasons I came to this con was because I'm having such a hard time accepting this ending as Bran as king. And I was hoping to get, thoughts on why this does make sense, because it just absolutely does make sense to me. That we would go through all of the prophecy, a prince who was promised, our Procelicals. We go through all of this, and then Arya slays the Night King, and Bran ends up on the throne. I'm having such a hard time with that. I do think that if magic is gone, that it does make a lot of sense, and if we get Bran back, it makes more sense. But to have this internet guys, like the internet computer as our king, which a friend of mine said, don't worry, the Russians will hack it.
Good. So
it's a hard thing to wrap my head.
I want to propose an answer to this question, and I have to give credit to Ashea for this. I kind of assume you guys know a little about this, but she's got this whole thing worked out, and I'm like, wow, it's perfect sense. Is it these different cultures with these different prophecies, these different heroes, right? The idea is that it's not, like, everyone has been trying to figure out, like, which person fits all the different prophecies just right. And then we start to even find ways to reinterpret the prophecies, or maybe it's gender neutral and it doesn't have to be a prince per se, just da-da-da-da. But Shay's idea is that, no, it is all of them. They're all right. It's all these cultures, heroes, have to come together. They all have to work together. It's all these different characters. It's not like one person fitting all these different roles. It's that the roles of all these cultures have to come together for this win. Does that make sense? It took Beric and Arya and like all these different people had their little role to play, that no one person or one culture is just going to win for everyone. They all had to work together. Does that make sense? That it didn't have to be Jon to do it. Jon, like Arya couldn't have killed the Night King if it wasn't for Jon's efforts and Beric's and all the other people involved. Everyone had to work together for this to happen. Does that make sense? I think that's like the message, if you will, you know?
I think more broadly, there's definitely a push towards democracy and away from,
I'm just thinking about everyone laughing at Sam when he mentions that. Because I think you made some great points, and I think that's an interesting way of looking at things. But I'm kind of in the same way that you are, and I'm, sitting here talking, like coming here, I was hopefully to, and it does, because when you're around so many people that love the same thing, you learn that in most stories, most television shows, if we're just looking at it as a television show, do not end well. And what I mean there, that not in like an unhappy ending. It's tough to stick the landing and make everyone happy. What do we have? Breaking Bad and what?
Lost.
Soprano. If you like it, that's controversial.
Yeah, it's like split on that.
What? Cheers, if you're into Cheers, that final scene of Cheers is fun. People like 6 Feet Under is maybe the best. And no spoilers.
If anyone ever saw The Leftovers?
Leftovers is another really excellent.
Yeah.
But the point is, it's less.
But we can name so many good popular shows. Everyone's like, Lost.
Sons of Anarchy is another one. If people like that show, it ended so bad. Like it's, and this is just another one. So I'm kind of in your camp in the way that I was filled with a lot of questions at the end, and I'm hoping that as the books come out and as people explain, some of it we maybe need to project. There's nothing wrong with projecting your own meaning on something, because the journey was really fun. Yeah, no, I hope not. Yeah, exactly.
Oh, well, okay. Well, I wanted to get into a bit of a theory that I really like, and it's tied also. I'll bring it back to Bran being king, but basically, Bran is the Lord of Light. Okay, all right. So yeah, there's a whole lot of things to unpack there with that theory, but the reason I like it is because it's based on patterns that George R. R. Martin has used in other novels that he's written, and he loves to write. He loves to write about a human becoming a god, in a sense. And I think he's trying to play with that same concept in A Song of Ice and Fire, and Bran is the one character that makes the most sense for him to do that with, and he's also played a lot with the concept of collective consciousness, and the Weirwood Network and the Children of the Forest. It's definitely what he's doing that with, and so I think there could be, well, the way I would want it to happen is, and the way I thought it was going to happen in the show, which I may have been raising my hopes a bit too high there, but I thought the fact that Bran was going to be in the Godswood with the Weirwood right next to the Weirwood tree as bait meant that he was going to die there. Yeah. And as we know, whenever a child of the forest or the three-eyed raven dies, their consciousness goes into the Weirwood Network. And imagine if this had happened while the Weirwood tree was on fire, right? Because there was a lot of fire around. It was very easy to burn the Weirwood tree at the same time. And then maybe his consciousness would get mixed in with the fire as it's going into the tree. It gets mixed in with the fire, and then you have a bunch of like ice and fire references in there as well. And then maybe that's how he was able to communicate through fire. But there's that. But I think it would be awesome if the same thing we were talking about, the getting rid of the magic in the end. If Bran could go through that process and then somehow be able to become human again, I think that would be an amazing story if we're going with the fact that he has the best story for being king. That would be pretty cool, right? If he was a god at one point, and I don't know. So that would be a cool way to become king.
That would be really cool. Yeah.
One thing with a lot of potential ideas about how he could have gone into Weirwood Tree or magic is gone, things like that, is how do you show that on TV? How do you
Yeah.
show that
Yeah,
he's
that
in
was-
the
yeah.
tree now? How do
That
you
was my
show
worry.
that magic is gone, especially with
Yeah.
like the limited time that they were committing to it? So then there's one thing about the rushed nature of the final season is that I brought this up in another panel, like that council they have at the end. Even if specifically that's how it goes, that they kind of it's going to what seemed like somewhat randomly show up all of a sudden and make this decision with almost no planning behind it. Even if that's actually what happens, you still think that no one wrote any letters leading up to that moment? You still think there's no communication between Sansa?
That's what I was
and-
saying. Like, we would have liked to see those moments. Where was the election in Dorne? Who was that guy?
But we would like to, but since we didn't get to, here we are to talk about it. You
Yeah.
know, like we're going to be thinking about this and talking about this until the books come out and after.
And it's one of those things like that I just keep like I have so many questions about season 8 and I just always tell myself, I'm like, okay, they just did not have enough time or did not want to spend enough time. And then I reflect on the earlier seasons and I'm like, okay, this was a whole Sansa chapter that they narrowed down into 2 sentences.
Yeah.
So that kind of helps me rationalize it a little bit and kind of have some understanding to deal with my feelings.
I think it's just poor. I think it's just poor time management when it really comes down to it.
Yeah.
I think they could have done it in 6. If we see what we saw, I think they could have done it in 6 episodes, but it could have been spaced out a little bit better.
Yeah.
They didn't need to do the 2 months later thing at the bottom of the screen and then put us all over to that panel with the console with everybody, because I was joking about it, but I would have liked to see down in Dorne again and see, at least for a second, even stopping in there. Is that Trystane, or is that just or is that not even a Martell? Is that there's other families in Dorne? Or the Iron Islands, Yara, like seeing how she would react to her brother's death, or that Euron's dead completely. I don't know. All those moments, I think, would have made the moment of Bran becoming king better if it just felt like it was more of a build-up. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, I would have loved to see Bran interact with more people.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then so everyone would be like, yeah, okay, everyone had their own interaction with Bran. They all know him. And yeah, that would have been a really good to see.
I think the conversations that we might have had between people going to visit Jon, while he's just sitting in jail waiting for this council to happen. Think about when Ned was in prison, the conversations we got with Varys. Like, we just didn't get any of that. How much that might have like shifted our gears and what we thought would or should happen, you know?
Those Davos Jon scenes would be awesome. I mean, Davos came and saw him and talked to him or whatever. Did you have a question, sir?
Yeah, I don't know how this fits into the plot necessarily, but what I thought was interesting when Daenerys said she was going to break the wheel. Well, who actually broke the wheel, but one who was broken.
Yeah.
Dun, dun, dun.
And on wheels. I don't know, that was bad. That's bad.
It's
Dun, dun.
Do you think that the Night King's insistence on, tracking Bran down had in any way, kind of identified that he was going to be the greatest source?
So like by the Night King targeting him, it should have given us an idea that Bran was going to be king. Yeah, no, I understand what you're saying. I honestly didn't put that together. Did you guys?
No.
Yeah,
No.
Bran as king came out of left field for me.
Yeah.
So that's why
I almost thought I was joking a couple of times. I almost thought they were going to Davos because when he started saying we need someone fair, we need someone that's outside the norm, I thought maybe Sam my mind never went to Bran. I don't know about any of you guys.
Yeah.
No, mine either. But to be fair, once it happened, you start thinking about it, I'm pretty sure more than any other character, we witnessed Bran be prepped for it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, we really do.
Rob probably sat there with Maester Lewin, learning all the house rules, but we didn't see it. But we saw Bran sit there and tell Rickon to be quiet, listen to the people with their complaints, learn from, you know what I mean? We saw him more than any other character being prepped for this position,
Yeah.
And I think it's also very important to remember the little hints, like the fact that his chapter is the very first chapter in a Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
And the
No.
very
Yeah.
first one
It's
written.
very true.
Yeah. And then, so it's probably going to end with Bran, start with Bran and end with Bran. Now, what does that mean? We don't know exactly, but it could definitely mean him being king. And also the, what's it called? Is it an allegory, I guess? For him liking to climb, you have to climb to power type of thing. I don't know.
Nice.
Maybe.
Nice. Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Now,
and being at the top was not the success either. like.
Right. Yeah.
So,
This is just a question I have because I'm curious, because I don't think we know for a fact. Who thinks Bran will be king in the novels? Or, yeah, I kind of do too.
Yes.
kind of do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I think what Val was saying is I feel like it's littered more in the novels. In the show, I feel like it kind of came out of nowhere. Hell, he's not even in a whole season. You know, but in the novels, I agree. He's the first character. You're inside it. I mean, you're in everyone's head. But I really feel like it's his story in some ways in there. And so I'm very curious to see how George would wrap that together in a way, because maybe I'm drinking the Kool-Aid. I feel like it would work there in a way that it didn't work on the show.
I've got like a series of thoughts here. Okay.
Yes.
If you think about, attempt to not get too political, but, let's say that the Night King maybe represents an environmental threat, right? Surely we can accept that Martin's using some symbolism, right? And we even get the conversation when Jon is brooding better than Tyrion, Okay, remember that? And Tyrion's like, look, it's hard to accept the threat like the world is going to end. It's easier to accept the threat like my sister is mean, or murderous, or, not to downplay how bad Cersei is. But you see what I'm saying? It's easier to address that villain than as sort of this intangible thing, And if Bran, they seem to be pushing the idea that he represented knowledge. Knowledge is going to save us, and knowledge is what should rule us, not someone running around with a sword, not war, but knowledge is Bran's symbol is what's going to win against this intangible threat of the environment. And also, I imagine some of you were maybe, they got this sentiment. They're like, we thought he was like the final villain. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Let's just say that we did. Let's say we conquer the environmental issues. You think that there's not still going to be bad rulers on Earth? Do you think that there's still not going to be the Cerseis out there that we also have to deal with? So to me, I agree along the way. I was like, what? But then afterwards, I'm like, I guess. I was able to reconcile almost all of it. I don't necessarily like how they got there, but when I think of it in this big picture sense, if I was telling the story to someone, I can't spend 80 hours telling someone's story. So I have to condense it down. I would hit these points, and it would make sense,
If that's the case, book-wise, logistically, why did the Three-Eyed Crow need Bran to come up there, and then who's going to bring Bran back? If he's going to, or will he go from the far north? Would it be hands?
I don't even know if he's going to leave that. This is where it's is he king? Because part of me feels like I never thought Bran would leave that cave in the books. So I don't know. I wish all of us. I think we all feel this way. I wish we had better answers, because a lot of this is just us playing Miss Cleo here a little bit, and trying to understand. It is the fun part, and which is why this is an exciting panel to be in, to try to explain this and think about this. So I don't know. I honestly don't know. I'm sorry. That's a horrible answer.
Do we think that it ties in any way to what the Three-Eyed Raven told Bran in his dreams in the very first book? Like, you will fly. You might not walk again, but you will fly. So if he ends up in this cave, Now, see, dragon, I'm always thinking about dragons secretly. So, that could be an option, his green seeing abilities, because, the Starks are all hell of wargs. They're amazing wargs. So what could he do? He can warg Hodor. Maybe he could warg somebody else and kind of use them as a vessel if he's stuck in the cave, which I think would be super interesting to have a king who's stuck.
It's funny
in
you
the
said
cave.
I sort of just thought about that. Could he just take over somebody and not the brightest bulb in the north and
It's
just
Hodor.
walk down?
Yeah,
just Hodor.
He forget the hold the door plot.
Hodor.
He's king now.
Did you have a question?
No, I was just saying, I think for a lot of people, they're upset with Bran being king is for so long he was a periphery character. He was not even in season 5. So I do think it's Martin's ending, but I think they didn't want to, spend as much time with him because the magic part is not as interesting. It's not as easy to write or interpret in a visual medium. And so I do think it's going to be Martin's end, but because they're not exactly fans of Bran or understand or have difficulty writing that aspect of the story, it seems out of left field. Even Isaac was like, is this a joke?
They may not have known at that point. They may not. We know that they've communicated with George. We don't know exactly what he told them.
When did they have that weekend? When did they get that bullet points?
Even even if he tells him something like, John kills Danny, but I don't know how it's going to happen. So they have to figure out how it's going to happen,
But I mean, Isaac did reveal, and I don't know if we should believe him or not, that he did sound pretty confident that George told him that Bran would be king in the books.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Didn't they say there were 3 things that they were taken aback by?
Yeah.
The
Right.
Shireen,
wow
Hodor, and
Yeah.
Bran being king.
But it was
the
Isaac,
three?
speaking specifically about Bran. There were 2 things that I think, I don't know if he heard this from David and Dan or from George himself, but
I love that blog post. Yes and no, no and
Yeah.
yes, and yes
I mean-
and no. It's like, come on, dude, stop being a troll for 5 seconds and answer a damn question. I don't care. Like,
I definitely think that it's going to have to do a lot more with magic in the books. If it does happen in the books, magic has to be a huge part of it, because that's all that the Bran story is all about. It's a more magical one out of everyone.
And when we get the Winds of Winter very, very soon here, I think
Next
it's going to
week.
be next week. I think it's going to be the most magical book that we've gotten yet. It's been set up that we're going to see some trippy stuff. So hopefully,
I mean, yeah, it's gonna be. We're gonna talk about a little about this later with John, but I think John's gonna lead us into some really unique territory, in my opinion, in the next book.
yeah.
And because I think you're right, Val's right. You guys are all. Magic is tough to show on the show, where a show you've established as the foundation of it is all this political intrigue kind of stuff. I think if a show is magical at the beginning, and I know Game of Thrones was a little magical at the beginning, but it's a fine line from dragons that could be real life creatures to see Jason and the Argonauts and skeletons popping out of the ground, and you're dealing with weirwood net and stuff like that. So I think it just works so much better in written form, and I think the show runners in the show has been much better at visually doing the political intrigue stuff and then big battles than magic.
Right.
Magic, you have to have a certain showrunner, an X-File-y kind of showrunner to pull off the Vince Gilligan showrunner to pull off that stuff.
It's also thin ice to be on when you start to use magic. Like I was ready to be very frustrated. Once Arya can just be anyone, I just stopped believing what's happening on screen anymore.
Yeah,
you know
it's
what I
tough.
mean? You have to be careful not to use too much magic, because it can be like a writing crutch.
Yeah.
Like it can come up with some dilemma and it can't figure out, like, oh, we'll just use magic. And so later when their dilemma is like, well, I'm not worried because they're just going to use magic to get out of it. So you have to keep it minimized.
And you mentioned it earlier, so I'm making an excuse to mention again. Lost season 1 has that perfect balance, and I'm not talking about later on. I know it's a trigger word, but the first season of Lost, I think, walks that line well, and is able to establish magic without it being ridiculous.
They keep it where it could be magic or it could be a
it could just be a
coincidence.
black,
It's hard to
like
know.
cloud of smoke that just flow through.
And in Game of Thrones, there's definitively magic, but we still don't quite know the nature of it, how powerful it is, how much we're overinterpreting. And I like it better that way. I don't want to just know that Bran can take over anybody. Oh, well, okay, fine. And I'm not even going to pay attention anymore, because it starts to become less meaningful.
Danny's hair suddenly doesn't burn, but that one pissed me off for some reason.
You had a question over there?
Yeah, I was thinking, the reason why Bran became king is because Tyrion spoke up for him, but they haven't met each other since very early in the first book. So if Bran's going to be in this cave for possibly the rest of his life, how does he get that interaction with Tyrion again to have him vouch for him, to speak for him, to the rest of the council regarding the best option for king?
Honestly, just like so many other things, they're just going to have Tyrion doing something another character is going to do. It's going to be someone else later, and they've made it Tyrion on the show, so it's because we've got to give Peter Dinklage as much work as possible. At least that's my opinion.
I think that a lot of it, especially in the last season or so, a lot of it was they just need to make sure the audience knows what's going on. And I don't want to be negative, but there's a difference between people who were coming out to cons and listening to taking notes, watching every episode 3 times, and there's just literally millions of people who love the show. They buy the T-shirt, they watch it every week, but they only watch it one time. They don't listen to podcasts. They can't remember every character's name.
The blonde one, Daenerys.
Yeah, like my sister loves this show, and we talk about it, but she still at the beginning of the season was clarifying. So John and Danny are brother and sister? I'm like, no, let me explain, And so I think the scene when John is telling Danny his true nature, that she's almost like repeating it back. It's like slightly staged dialogue, and I really think that's just to make sure the audience really, I guarantee you they screened this. They show it to audiences, have them take surveys, look at the surveys, like, they still don't know. Like, all right, let's rewrite this next episode and make sure, you know. And I think that's a little bit of it, just the nature of how they got to present this. Tyrion is just explaining it to us. He's making a pitch. But if that had just been a 10-episode season instead, it would have been a series of conversations. Like, I don't want to get too far off talking from Bran, but just think about the nature of when Varys is going to talk to Ned, right? When Ned's in jail, and at first it's like, you know, XYZ, you can go to the wall, and he's like blowing him off. He's like, look, they're going to kill you. And he's like, you think I care about my life? And he's like, and finally Varys is like, oh, your sisters, or your family, your daughters, you know. So, but that was like over 3 episodes, over a series. Like, Tyrion goes to talk to Jon. Next scene, like it was like 2 minutes later. It was like but imagine if that was drawn out over a series of conversations over 3 more episodes, we would swallow it a little more easily, you know. And I think the same thing. It wouldn't have just been one speech by Tyrion. It would have been a series of conversations, seeds planted, Sansa writing a letter, you know. Not that makes it okay, but it's the way I rationalize it in my mind. So.
I actually have a question for all of you. That scene with Tyrion and Bran in Winterfell, what's your best speculation about what they actually talked about?
I was just going to say that when you mentioned the other scene, that's another example of something in this season that probably could have been expanded on a little bit more. In a really great episode, probably the best episode, that was in episode 2 of this season, right? In a really great episode where we had a lot of great conversations, I would have loved to see a few more minutes of them talking. Instead, the way that scene cut, it's like what Sean was saying from a television standpoint, it cut like, did they continue talking? Did they or not? And then you realize that later in that final scene, he told him his whole life story, but it would have been, even if we just saw them together talking, you know, like when you're in a party and there's 2 drunk people that just can't get away from each other. Like if you just pass them at one point in time and you just see them talking in the background while Bran's being knighted or something, you know, something we don't have to hear what they're saying, but I just felt like I needed a little bit more to see what Tyrion's reaction was. I mean, Tyrion's such a logical individual. Okay, so you met Brendan Rivers and he made you, or is he Brendan Rivers on the show? I don't know. You met a magic raven you met a magic raven in the tree that looks like Max von Sydow. I mean,
I think that Bran said, "Look, if you don't pitch for me to be king, I'm going to give away the punchline to your story about the mule."
Honeycomb and the jackass.
I think you're on.
He's like, "No, you can't. Fine, you can be king."
Man, I really hope that they just like had a super interesting conversation and Tyrion asked Bran like every secret that he ever wanted, but. It's like the scene. I really wanted to hear the R plus L equals J reveal from Bran to Sansa and Arya. Yeah. Like I wanted to see that, but it got cut. Yeah,
there was a lot of those cut scenes, and it was really annoying.
Yeah, no, it was. I mean, there's no way around it. I can stomp my feet. It's not going to make the scene come. But what I hope is that those lines were written. You know, if we don't see something, there's something in acting and scene motivation. Like, I'm sorry, I'm going to get weird here. Like, moment before, understanding where you are in a scene. And even if you don't talk, like, if you're faking having a phone conversation, you actually want to have a conversation. You don't just want to go, yep. No, you got to pause. Okay, you're hearing the person. And in scenes like that, I hope the actors and the writers and the directors got together, and I don't know if they did, and discussed what that conversation was. What those points, because then when the actors go to motivate it, it actually works. And I feel like there wasn't all of that. I call it checks and balances. I feel like in this last season, the biggest problems was checks and balances from a performance acting standpoint. The story, whatever, we could bitch about it all we want, but like, I just feel like I hope that those moments happened, and I don't think they did.
I have this general idea or frustration with TV that a lot of times there's this moment being built up. And you get to it, and they cut away. You know, like the husband comes home and a wife's cheating or something like that. And then, like, I want to see that conversation. That's like the drama. That's where the character's going to be revealed. This is like the intense moment. And they always just like, and I guess not always, because a lot of shows
unless you're Breaking Bad.
Follow through.
Again, Breaking Bad does that. That'll be like cutting away. Hank finds out that Walt's, you know, sorry, everybody. Hank finds out that Walt's, whatever. And it's like, okay, we're not going to have them ever talk again. We're just going to see Hank showing up, whatever, in the desert. You know, like, we're just not going to actually do that. Sorry, anyone who hasn't seen Breaking Bad.
But so I get frustration. I get frustrated a lot of times when we don't see this moment that we know is juicy or powerful or whatever. We don't see it play out. But a moment like that, I realized when it cut away from the Bran and Tyrion, like, what? This is more than anything. This is what I want. But what did I actually expect to happen here? How long is this scene going to be?
I could have that be an episode.
14 minutes of Bran just telling Tyrion everything? Is that
I'd watch
really
that.
what I thought was going to happen? You know, so
I would watch the hell out of that episode. I'd rewatch that episode like 10 times. If it was like a whole 45-minute episode of just Bran and
this
Tyrion
whole
talking.
con would be on that scene.
Yeah.
We'd have it on the back talking.
Bran Tyrion con.
Yeah, doing commentary on the Bran and Tyrion conversation.
I've got a question in the back row there.
I love that because that fixes the not being able to have kids problem.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, so I mean, she was saying that, so like the longevity of the three-eyed raven that we saw, the one before Bran, he lived a long time, so Bran should probably be able to live that long. I wonder if it has anything to do with being attached to the tree, though.
Yeah. Directly
Yeah.
plugged into the werewood net probably gives you a longer battery life.
Yeah.
Well said.
Yeah.
Living a long time, including a tree, will give you a different perspective on the world.
Yeah.
You know, you might be a little less worried about certain things, a little more worried about other things, like long-term, like sacrifices of a current generation for the betterment of the future might be more meaningful to someone who lives 1,000 years.
I'm imagining the inner thoughts of the knight from Last Crusade that's just sitting in there waiting for Indy to show up.
He chose poorly.
You chose. I was trying to figure out for 5 minutes how to fit in. You chose poorly, but I couldn't
just
do it,
went
so I
for
just mentioned it. Thank you.
Yes.
I guess we're sort of getting towards the end. Does anyone have any last thoughts on Bran?
Oh,
Sorry.
Oh, okay. I'll keep it quick. Let me see. Okay, I wanted to talk about the fact that, okay, if we're thinking that Bran, like the whole thing that Brendan Rivers trying to get Bran or use Bran to become king again, what does that mean for, and I know there's no Night King in the books yet, but what does that mean for the Army of the Dead in the books? Are they trying to go after Bran because of this king thing?
It's another one of those, like, there's not really an answer to it. Just like, will there be a Night King in the books, or is there not even a necessity for one? Because to go what Sean's saying about television, in television, you need to have that single figure to have someone look at because of TV's unfortunate rules of television kind of thing. You have to have a villain, unless you're the Borg. But even in the Borg, they made a Borg queen. For anyone that's Star Trek fans, eventually you had to make a Borg queen when you had a movie because you can't just have... But whatever.
There is the Great Other in the books.
Yeah,
they
there's
refer
the
to the
Great
Great Other and the 13th Lord Commander as the Night's King.
Yeah. And they think that he was a Stark too, right?
Yeah, he was a Stark. So, and then we also really didn't get the whole relevance of the important Stark bloodline and why there must always be a Stark in Winterfell. So I'm hoping...
Unless they all go down to King's Landing for a quick meeting with no Stark and Winterfell.
Yeah.
Do we have time to get a question?
Yeah, I'm curious, what's your best guess for what Bran was doing during the Battle of Winterfell against the Night King?
My best guess is that he was just observing. Like, I think a lot of people are disappointing he didn't take over the dragon. I don't think he is this combative warrior that's winning. You know what I mean? He's just this source of knowledge, this source of wisdom, and when it's time for battle, go let the guys with swords do it. I'm just going to wait here. I'll observe. He's interested in what's going on, but I don't think he necessarily... maybe there's some idea that he was trying to draw the Night King to him. Like, hey, here I am. It's like, stop killing my peoples. Come face me. Maybe some of that, but...
Yeah, I kind of like the idea that there was a lot of mental battle between them two going on, and we just couldn't see it because, it's TV. It's really hard to show on TV, but that's what I like to think.
It's like Big Trouble in Little China when they fight. But yeah, I think he was just making fun of Theon for, he's sitting there ragging on Theon the whole time.
Anybody ever heard of Scooter Magruder? Yeah. Scooter Magruder, he does these YouTube videos. He just covers different things. It's all these 1 minute long reaction videos, And at that moment, he went to see Endgame.
I thought he was going to strategically use the birds to do something.
Yeah,
at least dive bomb.
There was that moment. I don't know if that's what you're referring to, that moment when he connects into the birds and they fly out. Was he just going to get a visual eye on the Night King, or was he doing more come at me, bro? Trying to throw it to him and using the birds as an annoyance to so the Night King could easily track where he was from there. He's maybe he doesn't know exactly where I am on the campus.
If you told me I'm in Nashville okay,
Yeah,
can
it's
you
like,
narrow
what
that down a little bit?
It's like me looking for my Uber last night drunk.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm on 2nd Street. Well, what street am I on right now?
And if in the meantime, every other car you're smashing to pieces.
Look, is this
like,
the car?
Just come with it. Yeah.
It is exactly why I lost my wallet.
Wish you had
I'd
a
rather
group of
lose my
birds
wallet
to
than my
send out.
phone.
No, it's going to be fun watching me try to get into the airport and check in tomorrow. I'll be like, hi. Totally. This is my picture, see? But yeah, sorry. I'm apologizing to all of you for losing my wallet. So I'm sorry, all of you, that I won't be able to buy you drinks tonight. I'm sorry. I'll be begging you for chips off your table. I guess we have a few more seconds. Any last minute questions about Bran, or are we all very happy he's king now? Do we do a good job?
Do you think we'll actually have a moment of Bran and Drogon meeting again?
Do I think it will actually happen? Yes, I do, because he's gonna be able to find him. I mean, he's got birds all over the place. I mean, you think Varys has birds? Friggin' Bran is in every bird in the friggin' world if he wants.
Which actually, it didn't make sense that he still needed a Master of Whispers, because he's definitely.
Perhaps, because he is the Master of Whispers, but perhaps he's looking for Drogon to be his successor, so he can like project his brain into Drogon, and then we'll have a dragon as king. I don't know.
That makes sense.
I
like it.
I think that's George's ending right there.
I think that's how we should end the panel. Dragon is king next.
Dragon is
yes.
king. Yeah, if we want to do a little quick outro here for everybody, I'm Sanrixian. Again, you can find me at Twitter at Sanrixian, and I have sanrixian.com. I'm doing a sale after Con of Thrones on all my merch, 15% off to 20%. Just hashtag code Con of Thrones. So, Val?
Yeah, she does awesome stuff, so yes, definitely check it out. Because Geek on YouTube, that's where you can follow me, or because Val on Twitter.
And I just want to say, she really gets down to the details and figures out Game of Thrones. All his videos are awesome. Anyway, follow me on Twitter, Dancing Sean.
Just look for me outside playing drums.
Yes.
Yeah, Phil the Issues Guy. Say hi to me, give me a hug. I lost my wallet, I'm sad.
Buy a drink.
Thank you guys for coming.
Thank you.